Hi, friends. My name is Carly, and I'm an employment attorney at the Manifest Justice Law Corporation. Today, I want to talk to y'all about a question that I feel we all know the answer to pretty much, but still, people pretend that they don't know the answer to. So, I want to make a quick video making sure we all know we know the answer. Is your employer allowed to fire you after you've told them that you're pregnant? I was out recently chatting with some girls, and one of the women in the group, once she found out I was attorney, of course, started asking me questions. And she was talking to me about how her husband has an employee who shows up late to work all the time and then calls out sick all the time. It's like 30 minutes before her shift is about to start, and she'll call out sick. And it's just very unreliable. And this woman's like, yeah, she's a great employee when she does work. But the problem is that she's unreliable and we can't always depend on her to show up. So we want her gone. And I'm like, okay, fire her. And the woman's like, "Yeah, but we can't because she just told us that she was pregnant." Okay, so I don't work for employers, so, never mind to her for that. But I thought this would be a great question to bring to the channel and be a great conversation so that I can make sure that at least we all here know the answer to the question. Obviously, I wouldn't have a job. Employment lawyers in general wouldn't have jobs. Employment law wouldn't be a fucking sector of the law if employers just followed the law. So obviously, employers violate laws every single day, and that's why they have attorneys, and that's why there are attorneys on the other side who represent workers who have to suffer from those violations. But yeah, it just amazes me that this kind of shit still happens. So even though I know that in the United States, like women have had to fight for their rights throughout history. And I understand that, like, at this exact juncture in history, we're going backwards a little bit, and like women's rights are literally just being stomped out and like erased. We're being silenced. We are being trafficked and raped and mutilated, and our babies are being stolen from us and killed and eaten. But the law still says that shit is wrong and illegal. And employers, especially, are still being held accountable for their discriminatory ways and for them trying to participate in the societal movement as corporations and institutions, which again are supposed to defend and demonstrate the morals and characters and constitutions that we have in this country and the laws. So the law says no. The law actually considers pregnancy a form of disability, temporary disability. I would think seemingly obvious reasons, but for those who don't know, when you are pregnant, it can become incredibly disabling. Like you can barely bend over, you can't drive sometimes, you can't go in a hot tub, there's certain foods you can't eat. That's just like for normal pregnancies. Then you take high risk pregnancies or medically complicated pregnancies, and it's even more potentially limiting. So, for multiple reasons, the fact that you're growing a whole human inside of your own body, there are multiple reasons why a pregnancy would be considered a disability, a temporary disability. So therefore, when you tell your employer that you are pregnant, about to be pregnant, becoming pregnant, have just found out, considering pregnancy, and then they act adversely to you, they fire you, they transfer you, they change your job title, your job roles, they change your pay, they like switch the projects you're working on, they tell you to come in less. Like, if they start fucking with you in any kind of way, that would be considered retaliation. Of course, employers know this. This is like basic HR training shit. So, of course, employers know this. And if they had like a good cause reason to fire a person, like in this example that initially inspired this video, a person who calls out sick frequently or doesn't show up on time, that's good cause for firing someone. However, if you didn't fire them the whole time and then you waited to fire them until after they've already told you that they were pregnant, and then they try to use the excuse that, well, you have a history of coming in late or you have a history of calling out sick, we would consider that potentially a pretextual reason for firing. It's just bullshit is what it means. That's just something that they threw out there to cover their asses, and it's not actually the real reason they fired her or fired the person who was pregnant. Okay. Obviously, I understand that employers, they have to pay for their person to be out on leave. They have to cover that position while they're gone. Like, it's a very taxing event on an employer when a woman gets pregnant, especially when the employer isn't set up to support women or people who are getting pregnant. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how taxing it is, doesn't matter how difficult, doesn't matter what a pain in the ass, how horrible of timing, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. A person who is pregnant is considered temporarily disabled, and to retaliate against that person would be considered not only retaliation, but also discrimination. And depending on the type of discrimination, it might also be harassment. In California and in Washington, both of these states have really, really great laws that protect pregnant people at work to ensure that people who are pregnant don't lose their jobs and their like professional progress. On a federal level, pregnancy is considered a temporary disability, and employers are not allowed to fire, retaliate against in any way a person who's disabled, temporary or non-temporary disability. But federal laws are really just the ground floor. We call it the ground floor of our legal rights. Okay, so that's not the ceiling. That doesn't mean that whatever the federal law says is the most rights you're ever going to have. That means whatever the federal law says is the bare minimum. And then states create their own laws that add additional protections onto what the federal law says is the bare minimum. So in Washington and in California, there are a bunch of additional laws that the states have added into their state legislations to make sure that people who are pregnant at work have even more protections and then the federal protections that are already in place. So if you are a person who is pregnant at work or who has been pregnant at work or is considering being pregnant at work, and you feel or fear discrimination, retaliation, or harassment, I just want you to know that you have a lot of ground to stand on. And you should definitely feel free to reach out in the comments if you have a question. If you're in California and you have a question, or if you're working in California, you have a question, you can feel free to reach out directly to the Manifest Justice Law Corporation and we'll provide you a free consultation just to better understand what your issue is and what your best options are for moving forward. If you live or you work outside of California and you're looking for an attorney and you have very specific questions, I would suggest reaching out to your local bar association for a referral and starting the referral process to find an attorney so you can speak with one. That's pretty much all I've got for today. It's a pretty short video. I just can't even believe that people are out there literally in this day and age, in this economy, in this society, and in this political climate, literally out there trying to force primarily women who are pregnant out of the workforce. Yeah, it's really peachy. It makes me feel so safe as a woman. This is certainly not the most inspirational and inspiring, motivating conversation or video I've ever made, for sure. Sorry about that. But hopefully you are walking away like with a bit more information, feeling a little bit more empowered and like knowing that you should still be getting paid. If not, again, reach out in the comments, let me know. I'll make another video and do a better job explaining or answer any questions that you have and, you know, do my best to provide support. Just remember, everyone works, but not everyone's safe at work. And I want to make sure you know the difference. I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.